Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real World Productivity Podcast. I'm Adam Moody, and today I'm talking with Andrew Hartman, founder of Time Boss, about his background and experiences so we can get a deeper look into his approaches to productivity and see what we can learn and put to use in our own lives. So, welcome, Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam. Really glad to be here.
Cool. Well, let's just kind of jump right into it. A couple things about you, your background and experience, so I and everyone else can understand a little bit more about who you are, where you're coming from. So, if you don't mind, just take a minute and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent the last 15, 20 years as an operations leader in early stage startups. So mostly software startups, mostly SaaS, those type of businesses. And these later years have been incredibly focused, a deep sense of peace and connectedness to the work I'm doing, making really tremendous progress on the things I'm focused on. But my origin was not that. I started my world in a marketing technology agency, mid-20s, had 12 clients or so, kind of loaded up schedule, and suddenly realized I had no clue how to manage my time without utterly overwhelming myself, which really led me on a journey. This Time Boss journey was a 15-year process to develop a system where I could make massive contribution to the things I cared about, but where peace and focus and clarity was my experience of work, not fear, stress, and anxiety. So that's really what I've been up to these last couple of years.
Okay, cool. Well, that alone, I think now I've got enough rabbit holes to go down, but we'll circle back to some of that. So,
Yeah.
I'm curious. You kind of answered this partially, but I'm just curious for kind of a definitive answer. Have you had any formal training or education in productivity, or was it all kind of right, sink or swim? You get to a point and you're like, oh man, I gotta figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, it was all self-taught for certain. If you got into the weeds of Time Boss, you would hear getting things done, and you would hear Pomodoro, and you would hear calendar blocking. I mean, all the classic techniques
Yep.
are there. What I had to figure out is how do I orchestrate these things together where I can both contribute at the level that I want to contribute, but also live with peace and freedom and clarity and be present to my kids and my wife after work and do things other than just be productive. I had to find a way to make all those things work together. And that's really again, but self-taught to that end. I mean, tons
Yeah.
of experiments. I like to say I ran 700 plus weekly planning meetings so that people in my cohorts don't have to.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
because I
thank you
just
for
was
doing
trying.
that.
Yeah, I mean, truly, and it was super selfish. I wasn't trying to build a coaching business or a time management platform or anything like that. I just was trying to survive,
Yeah. Well,
And
real quick, going to that. So you've talked about having, meetings, having these various things you do. I guess kind of skipping to now, what does that look like? Do you have a team? What are you managing like right now, I guess?
yeah, so half my world is running Time Boss,
Mm.
and Time Boss right now is we've got one employee. She is my wife. She's our executive director. She's our secret weapon. And then we run coaching cohorts. And so that we spend half of our time doing that. And then the other half, I'm a fractional COO for a managed service IT provider out here in California. It's funny, the time kind of plays out the same way. So the time boss habits that I'm coaching people into the cohorts is the very exact same things that we're doing within the context of the business as the COO.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm curious then, and I know people like hearing this stuff too. What's your normal daily routine like? I talk a lot about routines, the importance of them, but what do you do or try to do on a daily basis? And I'm okay with the kind of aspirational. You don't have to give caveats. Like on a good day, what do
Yeah.
things look like, and then we can talk about maybe some of the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So ideal day for me, I'm up by 6 a.m. I like to work out for an hour. I like to spend 30 minutes reading something. I've got the stack of books here over here to the right that's constantly staring at me. So I'm always trying to make a crack at that. I want to spend 30 minutes with my kids in the morning before they get off to school. And then once they're off to school, it's really about whatever I've focused in on. So my day has been planned for by my past self, which I call my time boss, in a weekly planning meeting the week before, where he's done the work to get everything in front of him, deal with all the trade-offs, block time. And so then I just roll into whatever that plan is. I'm not really thinking about is this the highest priority task? I'm leaning into that plan that my previous self planned for to say at 8 a.m., this is the most important thing. And run that calendar throughout the day, leave about 30% of my day for what I call whirlwind, which is just keeping up with life, emails, interruptions, all those things. So I'm planning my schedule, but not over planning my schedule. And then I round out my day with the other Time Boss habit, which is a daily review meeting. And the whole goal there is to just reflect on the day, close all the loops. So get anything out of my head back into the system so I can emotionally separate from my work and be present with the rest of my life. And then take a look at my calendar tomorrow and recommit myself to whatever I prioritize to make sure that I hit that. When I show up tomorrow at 8 a.m., I hit it with full conviction of that is the most important work I can do. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it or reevaluating or doing trade-off thinking or any of that. So that's really
Nice.
the ideal day for me.
All right. So as somebody who has been afraid of prior planning for a long time, as somebody who likes productivity, that's a little scary to say, but a long time ago, I forget who it was. There's maybe maybe it's David Allen or somebody else, but there's somebody who like did their planning on Sundays. And I was like, it was somebody famous, but I was like, I can't do that. There's no way I'm going to plan on a Sunday. So you mentioned planning the week
Yeah.
before. How does that fit in without, giving everything away? But what do you do? Is
Oh,
it
no.
on a Friday? Is it just throughout the week? How do you do this?
Yeah, and I'll say, the idea of giving everything away, Adam, I'm a total open book. I think information is easy. It's
Yeah.
implementation that's everything. So we can chat about that a little bit later. But yeah, so I plan on Friday afternoons, and I recommend people plan on Fridays because if they plan well and they prioritize the following week with confidence, where they get it all in front of them, they get it to the week, they deal with the things that don't fit, like they actually are also managing the things that don't make it to their calendar. They can really give themselves full emotional freedom. And a gentleman in my program says that Time Boss ended the Sunday scaries once and for all. That feeling of like, oh boy, like
Yeah.
here comes Monday. What do I have planned? What am I going to do? I mean, the reality is if you plan really well, it's just another day. And so that's why I like that Friday planning meeting to really free yourself up emotionally to rest and recover over the weekend. And then 8 a.m. Monday, just hit the ground running with whatever your time boss planned for you to do.
Nice. All right. Well, I like it, and it's something I'll admit publicly that I need to take this more seriously in the future. So might be checking that out. So,
Awesome.
um, okay. So then with the daily review, kind of a daily shutdown, it sounds like,
Yeah,
right? It made
correct.
sense to me. You're closing loops. I agree with the emotional kind of shutdown, separating yourself from your work. I know Cal Newport, I believe, famously has the like,
Yes.
I am done for the day. And I tried doing that for a while, and, it was almost like a mantra. But I finally got to the point where I was just like, oh, I can just say it internally. But it helps. And I was kind of surprised by it. Is there anything else you do that you find helpful as kind of the end of the day?
Yeah, so I'm really asking myself two questions: what worked, what didn't work, what course corrections are needed. Closing the loops, and closing the loops is all about just getting things back into the system. You've got to have a system that you trust. I think personal productivity, personal opinion is your job should be how can I do just one thing at a time and be fully present to it? And the only way we as humans can be fully present to it is if we have a system where we can park all the other things because we just can't, it's too many parts to count. Our brain just can't contend with that much complexity. And when we can't see all the things in front of us, we instantly feel stress. And so closing the loops is simply about getting the things back into the system and the trusting that the system's going to work. And like I said, um, I think half the battle with productivity is a wholehearted commitment to do the thing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people will go through planning activities and they'll get things to their calendar and then they'll show up on their calendar, they just won't do it. It's imagine if your boss invited you to a meeting and you didn't show up. It'd be a big deal. Like your boss is saying, this is important. I want you to be there. And so our planning needs to be the very same thing. We need to think of ourselves as a boss for our future self, where I put that on my calendar for a very specific reason, because it's going to advance my priorities or express my values or whatever. And so that daily review process of looking at tomorrow and recommitting is just about cranking up the commitment again to where when I hit it, I just make it happen because it matters and it's important. So those are really the key activities there.
Yeah, I really like that kind of being accountable to yourself. Again,
Yeah.
so everyone knows I'm coming off a cold, so I feel like my brain is somewhat discombobulated. But maybe again, this is somebody who's maybe this was like a quote, but you don't want to lie to other people, but you really don't want to lie to yourself, and that's who we lie to the most. Sadly, even the best of us. Whether it's a white liar, but it's a habit, and putting in those reps is hard. And I know for myself, something I had to do is I just really took down the amount of expected output because I realized if I can crank out 4 or 5 hours of actual work. I mean, like focused work, which I don't do every day. But if I can do
Right.
that on a semi-regular basis, that's an insane amount for me in productivity. I'm sure there's some people who can do more.
Yeah.
But I've just found that that's the case. But a lot of it, like you said, is being accountable to yourself and showing up and doing the implementation. Because I know it's easy, right, to get stuck in the where I'm going next, which is what tool should I use? Should I use Todoist or ClickUp or which one? And then spend, 5 hours or 5 days or 5 weeks setting up the perfect system. And then, if you don't put it to use, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. And I know you have a high opinion of habits, Adam, and I do as well. And I always tell people the tool doesn't matter. It's 100% your philosophy. Like, what is your philosophy of how it should work? And do you have the habits to reinforce it? And once you have that rolling, tools become a great thing to map against, right? I need a electronic list of tasks that I can easily sort in a weekly planning meeting. Perfect. Todoist can do that. Asana can do that. Monday can do that. I need a way to go from my to-do list to my calendar. Great. Asana can do that. Samsana can do that. Like, you can find tools, but I think the most important thing is to get your habits right, because you will, that whole James Clear idea of we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And obviously, in his world, you could change systems and habits
Yeah.
out. And so I think having those habits right is the most important thing. And then the tools become easy. Then tools are just shortcuts to help you better run your habits.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I love tools. And I think most people in this space would agree, like there's some, fantastic stuff out there, but it's avoiding the shiny object syndrome while still, having fun and enjoying it. So I do have to ask, what would we look at if we were looking over your shoulder on your phone or your computer on a daily basis while you're working? What are you working with?
Yeah, so I've got three tools I use. I use Asana to uh, just outsource every task that I possibly have in my head and manage it all. I use my calendar as a way to understand my inventory of time that I have available, and my calendar really runs my day. So, right now it's scheduled to be with you.
Yep.
And then I use a 3x5 card
Mm.
as a what I call a daily list, and that's just my brain today. And the reason why I use a 3x5 card is I don't want to have a ton of commitment to it. It's really a short-term memory to keep things out of my head while I'm working. And at the end of the day, in my daily close down, I'm moving it back into my calendar or back into an Asana. So things live in very few places. I'm committed to very few systems
Yep.
as a way to keep it all in front of me and just help me continue to run those habits.
Cool. I love it. Yeah, the first person I saw using a 3x5 card like that was my dad years and years, well, decades and decades and decades ago. And at the time I was a kid and I was like, okay, well, I don't know. He's being weird, doing something crazy there. But I look back now and I'm like, man, he really had it together. Like he knew what he was doing. And this was before the age of smartphones or anything like that, but it made sense where you're really focused and you're not diving back into all your other systems, which for him was a notebook and all this other stuff. But yeah, I think that what you've got there is a really good reminder to people to keep it simple because I'm going through that right now where I'm slimming down. I guess it's kind of like a sine wave. We pick up, we try things, accumulate. And I look back and I'm like, okay, I've got too much going on. I want to bring it back. And actually, I was writing a email newsletter today, and I'm curious what your take on this would be. Kind of abstracting projects out a layer. So, project management system for you would be Asana. For me, it's ClickUp. And those are both great tools for managing projects, setting up projects, tasks, subtasks, deadlines, all that. How do you find the need to keep apprised of all projects going on? Because you were talking about being a fractional COO, working with Time Boss, you got family commitments, you got all this stuff going on. Do you ever feel like you need a way to keep track or keep current or top of mind kind of the major things you have going on, or is that kind of built into your system?
Yeah, so the way I would say that, it's such a great question. I think it's a real strain that people feel, and they tend to feel overwhelmed once they start planning. They're like, oh, now there's too many things, and I feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of things that I'm looking at. I think you have to look at your time as a series of discrete tasks. And, in any given week, I'm going to give 50 hours to my, let's say, income generating activities. And so once I'm clear on that, that's just my inventory for I'm literally just building a recipe to how do I get the outcomes that I want. And so one of those outcomes might be I want to make sure that I have all the projects in front of me. And on a week to week basis, I understand what my next action is everywhere. So I can probably get that down to a 1 to 2 hour task. And then that just becomes a recurring activity on my calendar that I'm doing every single week as part of my recipe. I'm not really thinking about it, it's just showing up on my calendar, and it helps me maintain that focus. I personally do that for myself in a weekly planning meeting.
Yeah.
That's my time to just see it all, understand what's needed over the next 7 days, compress that down to calendar events on my calendar, and then make it happen. So I've tried to build as simple a system as possible to help me have that feeling of peace of I know I've properly resourced all the things in my life that I care about.
Nice. And for doing something like this where you have like a weekly review, is that something I'm just curious how you implement this? Is this like an Asana? Do you get is it in your calendar? It's linked somewhere? How does this actually work for you?
Yeah, so it's a calendar event that drives me back to Asana, and then it's literally just a series of prompts that I walk through. I'm happy to walk them through in detail if it's helpful, if you're interested. Otherwise, it's available online. I can
Oh,
link you.
yeah, if you want to send me the link, I can include it in the show notes. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
that'd be great.
But
Cool.
it's really just so it's a calendar event that drives me to Asana that's a series of prompts that really make sure it's all out of my head. It's all into a list. It's all prioritized. I manufacture those down into 1 to 4 hour tasks. I get them to my calendar. Once they're to my calendar and I'm out of time, I look at the things that didn't fit and I make a plan for those things, whether I'm delegating them or deferring them or whatever, just to give, again, it's all about emotional freedom. I don't want to feel the weight of anything else besides the task that's in front of me at 8 a.m. when I hit that task.
Yeah.
And so it's just doing all that work. And then the last step is just committing to the plan. It's just having that wholehearted commitment of these things matter. I did the work to plan for them. And when it hits on Monday, I'm going to hit it as hard as I can because I believe deeply in this work.
I like it. All right. So I want to switch gears here a little bit, and I'm curious about this. So uh, going back, I know it sounded like there was a big transition for you, what, about 15 years ago? Was that
Uh,
kind of when you made the change into doing stuff on your own?
Uh, that was actually just in this last year doing stuff on my own. I've been a part of different early stage startups for the last 15 years. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I misunderstood. So then that doesn't apply as much. But was there anything when we'll just go and take the last year? Obviously, you'd picked up a lot if you're managing teams, you're managing people, making that transition to being more on your own. Did you have to change did any systems change, any processes, habits? So, what was that like for you?
Actually, that's the magic part, Adam. It's the same habits. At the end of the day, for me, I'm going to give 50 hours to these areas of life, income producing areas of life. And so it just comes down to what are the habits that are going to drive that activity? So, what are the recurring things I'm going to build in? Always going to have a weekly planning meeting. I'm always going to have a daily review meeting. And then I'm just looking for a new recipe. So, as I moved into going independent, LinkedIn became way more important. So, having a recurring activity to do some specific things on LinkedIn twice a week became important. That's part of the recipe now. And so there definitely was that work, but the foundational habits of the weekly planning meeting where I'm literally budgeting my time over the next 7 days to the things that are going to be the highest leverage, that doesn't change. And so it's a really resilient set of basic habits that once you know how much time you have available and you know what your goals and your values are, you're just mapping the two together.
Nice. Yeah, makes sense. And you said something else towards the beginning that I really resonated with, where you're not being productive just to be productive, right?
Wow.
There's a goal for all of this. Um,
Yeah.
so how
And
do
it can
you?
be fun. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree. I wonder too, how do you feel in terms of, do you feel flexible or do you feel? I know you don't feel constrained by your systems or you wouldn't use them, but do you feel like it gives you the flexibility you need to vary whether you need to work more? To get the output you want, whether you've got a vacation with the family, do you feel that this has really given you kind of the flexibility you need?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on any given week, I look at the next week and say, how much inventory do I have? And I look at the results that I'm getting so far. Like, do I feel good about my progress? Are the right things getting to my calendar? I think when you have that, the power of habits is it allows, James Clear talks about that 1 degree course correction. It allows that 1 degree course correction week over week over week. So if I'm not making the progress that I want to make, how can I adjust the quality of items that are getting to my calendar, the leverage of those items that they get to my calendar? If my experience of life the previous week has been stress, fear, and anxiety, not peace, freedom, and clarity. What do I need to do to get clear on that? What are the things that I'm tripping up on that I want to be more thoughtful about? And time's the same. I've got a vacation coming up. I only have a day next week. Um, how do I just be honest with myself about that? That means instead of having 50 hours, I have 10 hours of inventory. How do I plan for that accordingly and feel all the feels in that weekly planning meeting, right? I think that's where we often punt to our future self is we don't like the feeling of prioritizing. We don't like trade-offs. And so we just hope that Shmo a week from now figures it out when it hits on his calendar.
Yeah.
But if I only have 10 hours, just do the work now. Like feel the feels now so that when I show up next week and I only have those 10 hours, I am fully present and I just make it happen. And then I'm on vacation. Um, that's where I do feel tremendous flexibility. I mentioned not over scheduling.
Yeah.
I'll have people say all the time, "Oh, Andrew, I don't want to bother you," and I'll tell them like, "I am not busy, but my world is full. I will maximize the time that I have, but I can 100% make time for you because I've got that buffer built in where real time I can make some values-based decisions on what I want to prioritize."
Yeah.
Um, but I can also just adhere to the plan. If nothing else is coming in, I can just make the plan happen.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a good way to explain it to people too. Like, no, I can fit you in. Like,
Yeah,
just don't expect, maybe set your own, of course, limits, whatever you want to
sure.
tell people. But I like that. I hear that too from me. It's kind of funny. I hear it from my family. Like, oh, I don't want to bother you. Like, it's during the workday. I'm like, I work in my home. Like, this isn't a problem. And if I'm
Right,
busy, I won't answer the phone. Like, but it's kind of hard to explain to some people. I think they may not understand. So.
right.
Um, all right. Well, let's see. I've got one or two more things I wanted to ask you about. What do you think is kind of the one thing you want to share with people that you think can really, help them out the most, or what do you wish people would do that could kind of give them the most leverage as far as productivity is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you create a weekly planning meeting and a daily review meeting, I think those two habits alone can drive so much change. And it's simple. Like I can certainly give you a full agenda for both meetings that
Yeah.
will help you shortcut. But if you just ask the question, what's working, what's not working, what course correct should I make? You will necessarily over time solve your problems because you'll go looking for solutions and you go to LinkedIn, you'll get an idea and you'll make a tweak and over time you will make marked progress. But the key is having those reflective moments where you're paying attention to the results of both the progress you're making in whatever you're focused on and your personal experience of that work and just adjust accordingly. I think if they do nothing else, if they install those two personal rituals, I think they can really make some significant progress in their life.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think too, keeping track of that stuff you do, especially now with so many good digital tools where you're writing this stuff down. I'm a big fan of writing pen and paper. I think there's something to it, but at the same time, I do a lot of this daily review. I personally use Roam Research just
Mm,
for journaling and note taking. And I've been taking that, and it's nice to go back and have it where I can look through, hey, what's the last 50 things I thought of to automate? And maybe I only do one of them, but just to go back and have those ideas and now with some of the AI tools, I've got a quarterly review coming up, and I saw someone's article that was like, "Oh, I've taken a bunch of my entries on my daily reviews, and I've had them kind of summarized so it can start picking out patterns." I was like, "Oh, this is genius! Like, this is great. I got another kind of benefit with for nothing extra I have to do. I'm just going to toss it in and say, hey, what patterns are you noticing in my self kind of notes to myself?" So yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. I went on a cruise in probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I brought every journal I had ever written to date, and I read in every single journal on that trip, and I summarized it down to 7 points. But it was the most painful thing I ever did, and I'm so grateful that AI is there now to solve that problem going
Oh
forward.
man, that's yeah, painful in many ways, I'm sure. So
Oh, it was self-loathing by the end of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times am I going to repeat the same problem?
yeah, well, that's like right. A lot of times it takes, and that's why I think it's neat to talk about this stuff with people, and even you and me. There's things we can still pick up, or like I admitted, there's
Absolutely.
things I'm avoiding, and I know it's coming, but I just have to get hit in the nose, a few more times by things, and then be like, oh, right, I know what the solution is. I should stop ignoring it.
Yeah, one of the Dr. Henry Cloud has the phrase that reality is our friend, and I just think it's just so powerful. Just getting comfortable saying it out loud, and
Yeah,
it takes having a strong identity that can withstand it, but if we can speak honestly about where we are, we can make those 1 degree course corrections and move forward. But we gotta, self-deception is the killer of progress. I think we got to be able to speak honestly about where we're at.
Definitely. All right. Well, last-ish question for you. What book or piece of media, it's up to you, do you find yourself recommending the most to people, this year, this month, today, whatever that might be?
Atomic Habits
Cool.
is probably the most powerful mental technology people can install in their brain. It, James Clear took something that we all know, we know the power of habits was there prior to James Clear. He just had a way of simplifying it and almost creating handholds for it that were each of us could take that first step and start making progress. And Time Boss in a lot of ways has been inspired by that. It's what is the simplest first step I can take related to my relationship with time to get moving and moving in the right direction. And then if you install them as habits, over time it just has exponential value for your future self. And I think starting with Atomic Habits is just such a powerful place to start.
Yeah, second recommendation over here as well. And I believe it's been a while since I read the book, but I believe he talks about habit stacking as well, right?
Yes, he
Yeah.
does.
And that for me was a big one where I was like, oh, that makes sense. And it sounds so simple. And just for anyone listening, if you're not familiar with this, the idea being like, maybe you get up and you have a cup of tea at 5:30 a.m. every day and you want to start meditating. Well, maybe the best way to do it isn't to try to get up at 5 a.m. and meditate. Maybe it's you get your cup of tea and you sit down and you meditate because you're already doing something that you're used to doing. That's a very simplistic example, but that stuff works. And for me, that's been a huge one. So yeah, I definitely recommend that book to people.
Yeah, one of his ideas that was just so powerful is who we believe ourselves to be. Our identity is one of the strongest forces acting upon us. And in our relationship with time, if we don't have a very good scorecard, we're often focused on the things that we're not doing, not the things that we are doing. And if we don't have a real sense of our capacity, we end every day with 5 to 10 things incomplete and we just feel like a failure. And so I think applying James Clear thinking to our time can be really powerful to develop some identity around I am the type of person that contributes to things that I really care about, and I'm bringing my best work to this. And I may not get to everything on my list every day, but every week I'm going to make marked progress on things that I really care about. It's just a powerful way of thinking that I think people often get tripped up on if they're not intentional about it.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think I got a book review to do again here. It's been long enough. So cool. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I know I've gotten a lot of good info out of this. I hope everyone listening has as well. So where can people go to find out more about you and, what do you got that maybe they should be checking out?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I give all of Time Boss away. So if you go to timeboss.us/masterclass, or you just go to timeboss.us, you'll see the call to action for masterclass. It's a 90-minute overview of the whole model, end to end. If you're a self-implementer, you can literally put it into practice tomorrow. Implementation is hard, so we do have cohorts that people can jump in where you will learn these habits with 4 to 6 other leaders just like you over a 6-week period. And it's kind of like time management boot camp is a way to think about it. And then I'm always available on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I do the one degree course corrections, just little insights about our relationship with time, helping you think differently about time. And that's a great place to connect as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Real World Productivity Podcast. If you know someone that would enjoy this episode, please grab the link and send it via email, message, or whatever means works best. Now, if you're looking for more ways to increase your productivity, time management, and team building skills, be sure to go to productivity.academy/resources to find out what tools, cheat sheets, and services can get you started and make the most impact right now. For those who want to make fast changes and want to save dozens of hours, I highly recommend joining the 14-day Productivity Foundation Challenge at productivity.academy/foundation challenge. This 14-day challenge takes minutes per day, but will help you develop or improve your daily review to get more done with less distractions and loss of focus. You'll also get over-the-shoulder directions for setting up an automation to save dozens of hours and the process for deciding what else you should automate and how to do it. And if you're serious about continuous improvement and you know that productivity, time management, and team building will impact every area of your personal and professional life, join us in the Growth Automation membership. Find out more at productivity.academy/join.